I want to tell you, we're getting great feedback from the mentors. You guys are on it. I know there's one team that's even thinking about completely doing a pivot, which is an awesome idea in a day. A pivot in a day is a pretty aggressive thing to do. That's great. So, we have people who were mentoring this morning who, when they left, said, "When are the pitches? We want to come back." So, you're attracting a crowd, and the work is pretty impressive. So, great job so far. I know you have a lot to do. This afternoon, we are super excited. I'm super excited to be able to introduce you to Grace Andrews. Grace and I, Grace has actually done some work with students here at PSU. She actually gives up all her weekends to work with young students who are in need of tutoring and guidance. No, sometimes not tutoring, just guidance to do things like do your homework, and you'll be fine. Grace has played just about every role that you can play in a startup. She's been a founder. She has worked at Puppet Labs as part of a fast-growing startup within Portland that got a lot of attention. And her title right now is Senior Solution Engineer for New Relic, which is a company that is monitoring web and mobile applications for other companies for performance and to actually deliver on the promise, the customer promise of those applications. And I'll let her talk about that a little bit more. I think the thing that really attracted me to having Grace come in to talk is exactly the title we came up with, which is very long. And if I talk too much, I'm going to give away all of what she has to say. And she's actually experienced it and lived it, which is, everything that you think you know about entrepreneurship, everything that's happening on that crazy show, Silicon Valley, is wrong. And she's going to talk about that, her own experiences as a founder, as a key player in a startup team, and what that was like. And we have plenty of time for questions afterwards. So I'm going to turn things over to Grace. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Trying to figure out where to stand. I was hoping to hide behind a podium so that you didn't have to watch me shuffle, but we'll make it work. As mentioned, I'm Grace Andrews, and I am a Senior Solutions Engineer at New Relic. I'm going to start my presentation, and then, is this for me? Should I keep going? Is this it? It's okay. I'll start talking while you get that. She does have it loaded, by the way. So while that works out, I'll tell you a little bit more about what I do. So I work in a tech company. And I know everyone here is tech, and they might have some idea of what it is I do or where I work. We've mentioned the show Silicon Valley, so maybe you're thinking, maybe I've only seen one episode, so I could be all the way wrong. But maybe you imagine that I sit somewhere, just hammer away at a keyboard, and then show up places and be socially awkward in public. That's not so much what my day looks like. I'm a solutions engineer, which means that I sit in between engineering, like traditional software engineering as you know it, and the customer. So I work in a sales role. So every day, I'm hustling, for those of you who got that reference. Congrats. And I talk to customers. So what's really cool about talking to customers when you sell a technical product is it makes you value that you have home training. But besides that, it makes you realize that you're always selling. You're always an entrepreneur. You're always building and innovating. And there's a lot of people who have misconceptions about what it means to even be an entrepreneur. So today's talk, which I hope is more like a conversation, is going to be about entrepreneurship and you, which sounds like an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And we're specifically going to be talking about how maybe some of the concepts you've had or been told about it might be a little wrong, at least in the world according to me. All right, so I didn't realize that this would be so far back, but for those of you wearing glasses, I hope you can see it. For those of you who are not, you can just squint. But this is the definition of entrepreneur. I'm not going to read everything that's on this page, specifically the etymology, but what I want you to pay attention to is what it says here at the top. A person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. And then definition 2 says, an employer of productive labor, contractor. I don't know if a lot of people associate the second portion of that definition with the word, but it's something that I want you to keep thinking about throughout this talk. Now, I want to talk about something that I think directly ties into entrepreneurship or being an entrepreneur. That's innovation and invention. They are two words that you hear a lot of the former, but not the latter. You hear innovation, innovation, innovation all the time. I think it might be the buzzword of 2012 to 2022. Who knows? But you also hear a lot of invention when you hear about people talking about innovations. And a lot of folks don't realize that there is a slight nuanced difference between what the two are. So let's consult the dictionary, because why not? Someone already did the work, I'll just borrow it. And this is the definition for invention. It's really long. As you can see, there are 9 different, quote unquote, definitions of the word. I want you to pay special attention to number 4, number 6, and number 9. So the definition number 4 says an act or instance of creating or producing by exercise of the imagination, especially in art or music. And then definition number 9 or 6 is the sociological definition, which says the creation of a new culture trait, pattern, etc. And then the last definition is number 9, which is the archaic definition, which is the act of finding. I just want that to simmer, like a little, soup on the pot. All right. So hopefully it's simmering, okay? Because all of this is going to matter here in a second. Let's talk about some well-known modern entrepreneurs. I've got a few famous faces up here. I don't think anyone would be like, oh my God, who is that? I also put their net worth because something that matters in business is money. And we're going to talk about that here in a second too. So I've got Steve Jobs, whose net worth upon his death was $10.2 billion, with the majority of that coming from his shares in Disney. We've got Elon Musk, who's the founder of Tesla, SpaceX, and whatever thing he dreamt up that day that he thinks he can boss people around to do. His net worth is $20.7 billion. We've got Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft. His net worth is $99.5 billion. We've got Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, at $151.4 billion. And I wrestled with adding Mark Zuckerberg because I think we always talk about him when we talk about entrepreneurship in the last decade. But I added him anyway. He made the short list. And he's, of course, the founder of Facebook and everyone's, poor time management skills. And he's worth $66 billion. These people are famous, right? I said their names. Even if I didn't have their pictures, you most likely would have had an idea of who they were. When we think of an entrepreneur, when we think of innovators, when we think of inventors even, we think of these people because they've all created something that did not exist before them. Here is the definition of innovation. Innovation is something new or different that's been introduced, right? Or it is the introduction of new things or methods. So not necessarily something new, but a riff on something old could definitely also be an innovation. Here are some lesser known modern entrepreneurs. On the far left, we've got Sarah Blakely, who's the founder of Spanx. Who here knows what Spanx is? All right, because hold it up, get it tight, and keep it right. That's right. That's not their official logo, but or even motto, but I'll shop that around and see if they're willing to buy. You think I can sell that? Okay, I'm gonna talk to somebody about this. So Sarah Blakely is making a lot of money. Her net worth is $10.2 billion, the same amount as Steve Jobs upon his death. And hers is not mixed up in someone else's stocks and shares, it's her very, very own. And what's interesting about the story of Sarah Blakely is that she took a concept that has been around for, since the first gut, about sucking something in, cinching something, tying it down, smoothing it over. We've all been doing it for millennia probably, right? I imagine a little early human like, ooh, this little leather belt really hides my stuff. But cute, right? That vision. But so she took a common idea, pantyhose, cut off at above the knee to hold things you don't want, not held in. It's simple. It's so basic that a lot of us in this room probably like, well, I invented that like 5 years ago too, because it's a concept that a lot of us experienced some sort of displeasure in maybe how we looked at an outfit, or we didn't think things looked as good as they could and we didn't want to go to the gym that day. And she took that concept and she provided an everyday solution. Let's be thinking about her in particular. The next person we've got is Richard James, who is the creator of the Slinky. And he actually invented it a long, long time ago, in like the 1940s. And he's soon since been dead. He died many, many years ago. But upon his death, or better yet, upon his leaving to join, I think, a cult in the Baltic, leaving the company to his wife. So upon his wife's death, the company was worth over $3 billion. This is literally a piece of not even good, solid material. It's glorified aluminum foil that goes down a step. And his whole entire, I guess, thesis or hypothesis that he was trying to prove was he could create a toy that could by itself travel down something, which is a set of stairs. $3 billion, y'all. Okay. So now let's talk about Mark Pincus. A lot of you probably have not heard his name, and that's okay, but you've probably heard of Zynga Games. And if you haven't, you probably heard of Farmville. Yeah? Who here knows what Farmville is? I've never played, but I saw it taking a lot of lives. And Farmville is a game that was first debuted on Facebook a long, long time ago, back when you could throw sheep at people on Facebook. And what's interesting about Zynga Games is the graphics weren't that great. Like, the quality of the game seemed pretty rudimentary, if you ask me. But it gave people something to do on a platform that was new and that was happening. And they were the first people to do it. The concept of online games is as old as solitaire on the computer when you were a kid, right? There's nothing too revolutionary about that idea. He just opened up how accessible it could be to everyday people. And then we have Ty Warner, founder of Ty Incorporated. I don't know how old everybody is in this room, and I don't think legally I can ask, but who remembers TY Beanie Babies? All right, y'all remember when that Princess Di came out? People were dropping almost $1,000 for that. Do y'all remember? Okay. Ty did that. So he is the creator of TY Beanie Babies, and he literally had a concept of bringing a little toy into the lives of children that could go on to become keepsakes. That was his idea. And what he did is, instead of targeting big retailers like Toys R Us or any kind of like a Walmart or a Target, he decided that he was actually going to pitch his idea to small boutique shops and price them quite high for what they were, and see if he could drive market demand by then going back into those shops and pulling the various Beanie Babies off the shelf and only selling them in select locations. So he created his own supply and demand, which is why he now has a net worth of $2.4 billion. Beanie Babies are now probably soon going to be in someone's Happy Meal. They're not valuable anymore. Even the collector's ones are maybe $100. But this man is a billionaire because of brilliant placement of a very common thing. And then our last person up here is Guy Liliberte. I might be saying his name wrong. He's Canadian, Quebecois, and he is the co-founder of Cirque du Soleil. And I put him up here because I didn't know he was worth so much money. He is worth $1.1 billion. And I'm going to tell you why that's impressive. He got the idea for Cirque du Soleil after years and years of literally being a street performer. This man made his living for well over a decade just standing on corners and performing acrobatic tricks, playing the harmonica, playing various instruments, and he began to form a community around him of street performers. And he, as a child, of course, went to the circus. I think it's like at least a stereotypical like North American thing, go to the circus, or it was at the time that he was a child, and he saw something that inspired him, and he kept up with it. And chance would have that eventually, he felt the pull of society, and he's like, I should get a real everyday job and be a real boy Pinocchio. So he decided that he was going to go back home to Quebec and work in a factory. Funny enough, the factory shut down a couple weeks after he started, and he went back to his life of, busing on the streets and earning his keep as an artist. And after building this community of performers, he thought, why don't we do this in front of people with costumes and with music and with lights and make it a circus-like experience, but be where we can showcase the arts, where we can showcase our skills, and we can make people imagine that they're somewhere else for a little bit. And how incredible is that, right? That company is now worth 1.1 billion. And that's just his share. There's several co-founders. So Cirque du Soleil is a phenomenon the world over. It's something that many people, are standing in lines to see. They are sold out every time they debut a new show. He is, in every sense of the word, been quite successful. So how many entrepreneurs are there really in the world, at least in our world? So 27 million working age Americans are starting or running a new business. And I want to talk about specifically that. I think that when we hear the word entrepreneur, it's trending. I think it's something that a lot of people use very ubiquitously, but they don't necessarily understand or perceive what the word means. You know what an entrepreneur is? It's somebody who is running a business, right? And no one ever says that anymore. No one says, well, I'm a business person. Everyone says, well, I'm an entrepreneur. And I think that that's where we're probably going to start with the conversation of how some of the things you've been told may not be as accurate as they are. So this is the real talk portion. So if y'all thought what was happening before was real talk, boy, are we in for a treat, okay? So we're going to talk about some of my simple rules that I developed after a couple of years of being an entrepreneur. Before I talk about my experience, maybe I should tell you what my experience is. I started my first business out of my house when I was roughly 8 years old. Let me tell you what I was doing. I discovered that my brother hated doing chores. He was 5 years older than me, or he is 5 years older than me. Time has not suspiciously changed. And he always wanted to be with his friends or ride his bike or just do something else, be a child. And I was like, oh, your chores? I can do that for a small standard fee, if you don't mind, and a little bonus on top for not telling her parents. So, of course, that meant for me, like washing dishes, I got 50 cents, and I was like, wow, look at all this money I made. 8-year-olds, what do they know? And so that was my first business. And then I realized my parents, we immigrated here when I was about 4.5 from Ghana, West Africa. And my parents worked very, very hard. They both worked 2 jobs most of my young adult life. And my dad was a forklift operator. So his neck and his back always hurt. And I realized, oh, my father's back is sore. What can I do to help that? So I slid up next to my dad and I said, Dad, for $1.50, I will give you a 30-minute back massage. If you want me to use the Bengay, it'll be an additional $1. And my dad was like, okay. And then around minute 25, I'd say, we can add 10 more minutes for another $1. And my father was like, wait, what? For you, love you, 50 cents. And so by the time I was 10, I had saved up $450 that way. As you can tell, my family was really not catching on. But I think what was really happening is I come from a family of people who have been hustling for a long time. My mom used to sell our version of like donuts in the marketplace when I was a baby. She would put me on her back, put something cute, hopefully, on me before we left the house, and she would sell these in the marketplace with a kid on her back. My brother has been doing construction type work since he was about 11 or 12. I was raised in rural West Tennessee, so there were very questionable child labor laws, and he was able to work. But all of my life, the people around me had been working. But I don't know if I asked my mom, hey, Ma, do you think that those 5 years working in the market, you were an entrepreneur? She'd say, no. I was just doing what I needed to do and making money. Would my brother say, yes, as a child, I was an entrepreneur? He would say, I was a kid, it was the summertime, my friend's dad owned a construction company, and he was paying $10 an hour. And there's a sense here that entrepreneurship is based in these aha moments that break ground, that allow you to create something that will be written about in the scrolls and epics of time. And that's just not true. That is usually lie number one. No one wants to be a business person, but everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but they truly are one and the same. And I'm going to share a little bit more of my story as we go on. So here's rule number one, right? It's all the same. So this one is called forget the hype. And this is what I mean by that. When I was first deciding that the way of the entrepreneur was my life, I felt the calling on me, right? Like a young Jedi in training. I was thinking to myself, I think I have really good ideas. I think that I could build these ideas. I want to learn more about how to do this. So I spent a lot of my childhood actually in these summer programs where we would do mock business or mock conventions, or we would do mock political strategy to help me develop that. And so when I actually decided to become an entrepreneur in the grown-up world, which what that really meant was I decided to give up the safety of health insurance and regular paychecks and delicious vegetables, I did so believing the hype. So coming out of grad school, which I went to the Monterey Institute of International Studies, and it's a Middlebury College. So now the new name is Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey Bay. That changed after I graduated, so my diploma is not that crowded. But I had went in to study public administration. So I have my MPA with a focus on international policy and business in the emerging markets. And when I went in, I had this vision of being the next Kofi Annan. I was going to be the Secretary General of the UN, speak 100 languages fluently without ever learning them or trying to. And I was just going to be a powerhouse in the world of international policy. I just had this vision for my life. And I got bit by the entrepreneurial bug. I took this one class about entrepreneurial development, and I was like, oh my God, this is who I've always been. Let me ascend to the greatness. And so I decided to do some things that were, in hindsight, incredible for personal development, but just really terrible for my financial long-term planning. And one of the things I did is I went to Brazil with Frontier Market Scouts program to do a model called Village Capital. So the Frontier Market Scouts program is actually still around. I was a part of the inaugural class, which is code for it was loose and a mess, but they've gotten it together. And they sent me there on 2 weeks' notice. I was at an event, and they were talking about how they needed some people to help run their Village Capital process in São Paulo, Brazil. At the time, because I was taking Spanish classes, I was like, oh, Portuguese, I'm gonna learn that. And so I offered myself up as tribute to go to Brazil. And I even offered to pay my own way. What was I thinking? And I was like, what am I doing? I'm a broke grad school student. What am I even thinking right now? And not only to pay my own way, but to also pay for 4 weeks of language classes myself. Y'all, I had a work study. I do not know what I was thinking. And so, of course, when someone makes you an offer that great, you can't say anything but yes. So they said, yes, Grace, we'd love for you to go. And so off I went. And I, paid a lot to have an expedited visa and just got all of these shots and vaccinations, and I was good to go. I got to Brazil. Had a great time, actually. It's one of my favorite places on the face of the planet, and I'm grateful for the experience. But when I eventually finished my language training program and was going to work, I met a lot of entrepreneurs who were being labeled as indigenous entrepreneurs, which really caught my eye because by academic training, I'm an anthropologist. So I thought, ooh, indigenous entrepreneurs. I was like, I'm an indigenous person, they're indigenous, this is gonna be great. So what they meant by indigenous is someone who was just from there. In my mind, I was going to be working with native tribes in the Amazon jungle. I was going to discover a new group of like fungi. We were going to call them gracerooms. It was going to be really awesome. I was ready to just dominate. And I got there and I was like, I can't teach these people anything. They've been running a business for 10 years. Can I learn from them? And that was the beginning of me unraveling the hype. And I had the good fortune to meet a Brazilian equivalent to a, Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. He was a man who had done a lot in the communities, in the local communities in various parts of Brazil in the different states, who had also brought venture capital into the country, and who was also working with politicians to open up the space of technology a little bit more. And I asked him in the worst Brazilian Portuguese you have ever heard, but he still understood because he was really polite, what I should do. I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. If you could only give me one piece of advice, what would it be and why? And he said, go and work for someone else. I said, wait, what? I said, huh? And he said, you got to learn how to build a business. You got to know how to lead a team. You have to know how to encourage yourself and other people to work through problems. And you're not going to do that if you think that you're so great already that you can start a multi-million-dollar business today and not have anyone mentor you, guide you, or help build up that skill set. I said, okay. So when I came back to the States, I was in that kind of mindset. I thought, I'm going to find people that help me actually become this entrepreneur that I think I am. And, he'd also made that comment as well, as a business person is an entrepreneur. It's the same thing. He's like, it's just a new way of saying an old skill. So when I came back, I thought, okay, I'm going to go look for this regular old job. I'm just going to sit up in here, be basic, and then later on be magnificent, right? Like a phoenix from the ashes. I was ready. And a good friend of mine at the time said, I'm building a business. I have this idea. He told me what the idea was, and I was like, the idea is great, but your ideas for how to implement those ideas are trash. Sometimes I struggle with honesty, so it was one of those moments where I was struggling with my honesty. And I was like, it's not a good application of that technology. It's just not. And his technology was centered around showing how everything was connected. He took a data science class, being from a physics and philosophy background. We were using, I think they were using R in the class and SPSS, and he was just like, wow, data sets are so incredibly connected. Like, could you connect everything to each other? And I was like, yeah. I'm an anthropologist. We think everything is connected. We don't think anything lives in isolation on its own. And so as he began to really evolve that idea, and I, without being asked to, shared my opinion, he said, come on board and do this. Like, let's be co-founders. And I thought, return of the glory. I was ready. I saw in my mind, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna be the black female like Zuckerberg. I'm just gonna be at the office. It's gonna be great. We both have red hair. I was ready. And I soon, through that experience, learned the other rules. Don't wear exhaustion as honor. So I actually moved to Portland to build out this company. I left California and the wonderful weather that is the Monterey Bay area. May that good weather rest in peace. And I came here to participate as a part of the Portland Seed Fund. We were one of their first, or it might have actually been the second cohort. And we were going through their program, receiving mentorship, doing a lot of the things you all are doing today, actually. Pitching, perfecting our pitch, polishing our pitches, all of these exercises that really helped us build better products and just a better way of working. And we were all really tired. And during this program, I was maybe going to 4 to 6 tech meetups a week. After working 12-hour days, I was then spending 7 to 10 socializing, trying to get out there, trying to meet other entrepreneurs, trying to build this company by having the correct connections. And we all wore exhaustion as an honor. It was almost like it was a game who could outdo someone. Like, oh, I only got 5 hours of sleep last night. Oh, I've had 5 hours of sleep for the last week. Oh, I haven't slept since I was born. And I was like, wait, what? And that's all we did, was just try to one-up each other on how tired we were. And none of us were eating well. Most people were drinking too much, not dealing with stress, not really engaging in the kind of self-care that even gives you the ability to build great companies or make good products. And we were all so proud and happy about it. And I think that that's rule number 2. You don't need to wear your exhaustion as an honor. If you're the kind of person who goes to bed at 9 p.m. and wakes up at 7, good for you. What's your secret? Share it with the rest of us. If you're the kind of person who wants to, go to the gym after going to a networking event instead of going out for more shots, good for you. I think that what happens a lot of the time is we gather together as entrepreneurs and we think that the output that we see is simply based on direct input, and that direct input can only come in a certain way, whether that means it can only come from, strategic meetup participation, or it only comes from staying up until 2 in the morning to write your new business plan, or to write another line of code for your application, or to research your competitor. It can wait. It'll be there tomorrow. And it wasn't probably until 2016 that I learned this lesson the hard way. My company actually went under. It didn't go under, but it went the way of most companies. We phased out in 2015. And I've actually been working for other people since while building my own ideas. And in 2016, I just started feeling weird. I was the kind of person, not to humble brag, but I walk my dog 90 to 120 minutes, 6 days a week, woot. And I also still try to make it to a yoga class or go to the gym, bless you, or do something that I consider self-care. And I got to the point where I didn't want to walk my dog that long. I'd be like, Athena, what are your thoughts on walking down the street, throwing a ball, and just turning around? And she was like, what? I said, you're a dog, I don't understand that, let's go. So I started feeling really fatigued, really run down, severely exhausted. Long story short, I was diagnosed with a couple of autoimmune diseases. I was actually pretty, not sick, but I was not well. And it took me going from 4 to 3 hours of sleep a night to sleeping 12 to 14 hours a day. So I'd go to work, come home, go to bed. Walk my dog, of course, down the street, throw the ball, and then come back. And for me to realize that I needed to slow down. You don't have to get to that place. There's no reason to work that hard. Even if what you're working on is going to cure cancer, stop climate change, bring back really cute, non-aggressive dinosaurs, and also usher in world peace with such said dinosaurs, you can still step away. And that's for you, because your health is your wealth. And as cheesy as that sounds, you never realize exactly how valuable it is until you don't have it anymore. Rule number 3, maintain friendships. I wish this one could spin around and pump up 1, 2, 3 and blow a bullhorn, because this is the one that I see a lot of people failing at the most. Well, the exhaustion, yes, that I think is a kind of given. There's a lot of people who, before they were successful, had a group of friends, while building something had another group of friends, while launching something had another group of friends, when getting famous had another group of friends, while living the life of fame had another group of friends. And even though I'm only famous in my brain, I have had this model of shifts in my friends. And I like to think about these things all the time, because I think it's really good to reevaluate your life while you're still young and you can make impactful changes on how you live. And I really started thinking about this hard. And something I remember from my startup hustle days when I was doing the startup shuffle, as I call it, in the way I thought I was supposed to, I would spend a lot of time with people who were not my friends. So, going to these meetups takes time. Attending all of these events for founders and entrepreneurs takes time. And before long, I wasn't putting as much effort, work, time, or even mindfulness into my ride or die homies. Who here knows what a ride or die homie is? For those of you with non-raised hands, a ride or die homie is that best friend. The one who you call up and be like, ooh, there's a body. And they like, oh, I got you, girl. And they show up with bleach, plastic bags, shovels, kerosene, a small handheld bomb, ready to just do whatever they got to do to make sure you're okay. That is a ride or die friend. And luckily for me, I have great friends who rode the highs and the lows with me. But something that really, in the beginning, hurt my feelings, and now I've realized it's just kind of the evolution of life, is I spent a lot of time with people who were entrepreneurs as well. And there came a point where in my mind, I was like, oh, these people are like my real friends. And I realized those people are not my real friends. And this ties into number 4 here in a second. These people are my colleagues. They are, which sometimes can be your real friends, and I do encourage for them to be, but they're your associates. This is your cohort. You're doing something in tandem with them that only maybe they could understand. And there's a beauty in that simplicity of that relationship. A lot of people, because they're spending so much time in these cohorts, might think, I should make these people my true blue friends. And something that I realized from spending way too much time with other founders is there's more ego in the room than there are friends. I want to repeat that for the people in the back. There's more ego in the room than there are friends. And so when you decide you're going to build relationships, when you decide that you are going to spend the other gift you have in life, which is time, choose wisely. Because I'm going to tell you a story. I've come up with significantly better ideas since not fraternizing with only founders than since when I was. Because the first list of people I showed you, the well-known innovators, they actually are all friends with each other. I mean, maybe like frenemies. A lot of them grew up in the same geographic region. A lot of them went to the same high schools or were in the same school districts. They are maybe friends. And a lot of those people that were on that first page also have a reputation for being terrible human beings. Okay? That saying, birds of a feather flock together, is true. And what I realized the more time I spent in some of those circles is I didn't like who I was becoming. Because the people you surround yourself with become who you are. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, no, but that's okay. Like, I can rise above it. I can transcend. I'm floaty. I meditate. Well, meditate yourself right on out of their lives. And that was one of the hardest lessons for me to learn. I'm a loyalist because I'm an Aries. Thanks for asking. And I love being loyal. I feel bad for feeling bad for thinking about not being loyal to my friends. But there came a point where I had to decide, what is a friend? What is a friend? And what is an associate? And who do I have the first priority to? And for me, my friends are family. So just substitute here, family. For those of you who have families you enjoy, hopefully that's everybody in this room, that's what matters. That's what makes you successful. That is the biggest ROI you could ever have. I love Warren Buffett. My dream is to one day be the black and fabulous female Warren Buffett. Oh my gosh, I just can't wait. And to be able to just use money as starter for my fireplace and just, have my pillows stuffed with it because it doesn't mean anything, and just to run around handing money to people on the street because it's a Tuesday afternoon. That's my dream. But you know what Warren Buffett said? His quote, this is a very loose, gracified version, was, that he always has a board meeting with his friends, that he checks in with them to see how their ROI is going in their relationship. What are some points of improvement, and what were some things that were done well? And one of the main people that he does that with is his wife. I read that and I said, happy wife, happy life. But no, I read that and I thought, that's brilliant. This man has been very rich for very long. All the people I showed you on the page before cower at his feet. And do you know what he said the most important thing in his life is? His friends and his family. Not his riches, not his brilliant investments, not his good ideas, not his properties. He said it was his friends and his family. And that even today, sitting on top of all that money, he checks in with them regularly. Once again, that first page I showed you, some of those people are not known for being the kindest. Some of them have terrible reputations. Elon Musk, I'm looking at you. A lot of them have predatory business practices that continue to harm the communities they go into. Yeah, they're innovating. Yes, I too love my Amazon Prime and may or may not have a small addiction to it. But I also recognize that there are business practices that Amazon does that are extremely harmful. I also recognize that they've not paid federal taxes this year. But I know I had to pay a lot of money. Hey, who else? No, but honestly, I know that they've made innovations that have cost us as well as benefited us. And you have to think about who they're surrounding themselves with and who's influencing them to continue down the road that they're on. So that's something to keep in mind. That's rule number 3. Rule number 4, understand the art of networking. Who here is really good at networking? There's like 3 people in this entire room who are good at networking. Oh, y'all might want to add something to the curriculum because there's some stuff happening. Okay, so for those of you who are not good at networking, why are you not good at it? That's very valid. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Yes. Anyone else? That's right. Strangers are bad. Don't talk to them. So a lot of you are not going to believe this, but I did not speak out loud in public to other humans without whispering in their ear until I was 6 years old. My brother went to school across the street when I was 5, and when the teacher would ask me every day, I knew this woman, she wasn't a stranger, what I wanted for snack, I would just look at her and blink slowly, probably like that, but this big, and she would have to call across the street, ask my brother's teacher to send my brother over to my school so I could, and he's like, she'll have the gummy bears, an orange, a banana, and a high-C little squeeze box. And then go across the other side of the street again to go back to class. Every day during snack time for a year. That teacher loved me. I did something quite similar when I was in kindergarten and 1st grade. And one day my mother sat me down and said, what do you want to be when you grow up? At the time, I was 6 and a half, and I had a very long list, okay? Let's start at the top. I was going to be the first female president of the United States of America, but then my brother told me I wasn't an American-born citizen, so that wasn't going to happen. And at the time, we were still just permanent residents, so it was really not going to happen, but I didn't let that deter me. I was also going to be the world-famous archaeologist, anthropologist, and I was going to dig up a new dinosaur and call them the Graciosaurus. Cute, right? And then I was also going to maybe go to the moon. I had a lot of visions and plans for my life. And my mom said, okay, cool. That's great. How are you going to do all that? I was like, well, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to be a good person. She's like, yes. This is so good. I said, yes. She was like, how are you going to do that when you don't talk to nobody outside the house? And I was like, I don't know, Ma. And my mom doesn't sound like this. We're West African, so my mom has a wonderful accent, in my opinion. And she was like, oh, Eresi, but you cannot talk to anybody. I was like, I mean, I talk to you. You're my friend. She's like, oh, but what business will you build in this house? Eh? I was like, oh, that's a good point. She was like, what will I do for you? I said, oh, that conversation changed my life. I was 6.5, and I was open to listening because I was a West African child, and that's all you're there to do is listen. And my mother's advice didn't really make sense, but I thought, I'm gonna go with it. I hated talking to people. I was terrified. And so she proceeded to put me in church plays, community plays, kids' open mic nights, poetry readings, everything. My mother is one of the quietest people I've ever met. You can be in a house with her, and she say 2 words to you all day, and it's not because she's mad. She's just a very silent person. So I thought, this lady doesn't say 10 words in a calendar week, and she's out here making me talk to everybody. And in that moment, I didn't realize what I do now. My mom knew what her limitations were in this life, and she didn't want me to have the same barriers. Now, it's not that my mom's not a friendly person. She is. She sounds like a character from The Lion King, so it makes her even more friendly. She's, funny in a very silent and witty and dry way. And she's a great person. And everyone gets a sense of that, but very few people know her super well. And what that made me realize is networking is about you being yourself with one other person. When I go to networking events, these days I can work a room like a cheetah on a prowl. I get in there like, yes. But what I recommend to you is find a few people ahead of time. If you have a list of attendees, select just 1 or 2 people you want to talk to. And I actually still do this. When I go, I stand in a corner for a little bit, I compose myself, and I watch. And I watch and I look for people who I think have kind faces. I look and I wait for people who I think look like they're really listening to the other person that they're talking to. And I go and I talk to them. And I only talk to maybe 1 or 2 people. If I'm feeling really great, maybe 3 or 4. But you don't have to work a room if you don't want to work a room. The greatest networking that's ever happened to me has been one-on-one. It's the people that have helped me throughout my career and still do. I met in a busy room, speaking to only them for the entire night. And then by the end of the night, they're like, I feel like I know you. I think I can do something for you. Everyone will tell you, oh, it's your Rolodex. It's only the power of your connections. Got to get out here, got to network. But you don't have to follow the model someone else gave you. You can create your own form of networking. And as a result, I go to 1 or 2 events now, and I know everyone in the room because I spent years before cultivating individual relationships with them. And invite people to coffee. Maybe you can't talk for very long that day, you're not feeling socially up to it, and it's too loud and you just need to go home. That's okay. Grab a business card. And what I do is I actually very rarely give my card away, mostly because I don't have one, but because I find it's better in that moment to we all have computers in our hands. Maybe somebody's using a flip phone, no judgment, send a text message, SMS. But I send them an email immediately. I've noticed now that people add folks on LinkedIn. They're like, is it okay if I add you, get their information, add them and send a message? There's other ways to create quality connections and then have meaningful interactions that don't have to lead to lifelong friendships, that can simply be about understanding that you have a need and you think that they have expertise or experience that they can assist you with. So learn how to network well for you. Don't just go to these events to go. It's okay to sit out. It's okay to email somebody and say, I knew that you were going to be at this event. I wasn't able to make it. Can we grab lunch? My treat, right? So don't feel any pressure to play that game like everyone else has. Because the folks on the second list, the ones who were lesser known, a lot of them built community. And it's through their community that they got their inventions and ideas to the rest of us. So don't feel like there's just one way to be successful. Rule number 5. This is the most important one, y'all. Build something that matters. I can't speak for any of y'all, so let me talk about me. I knew some people who were starting their own companies because they couldn't work for anybody else. I know people who are in their early 40s who have never had a quote-unquote job for more than 3 or 6 months where they worked for someone else. And they're like, oh, it's because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a creator. No, you got a problem with authority and you don't want to listen to anybody else. But okay, I'm so serious about that. And it's okay if that's you. It's okay if you know that you're naturally insubordinate. I am too. You know that you're an anarchist. I am too. You know that you think rules are meant to be danced around. If you don't like them, as long as they don't break the law or harm others, that's me too. You know you want to question the status quo. Hey, you can do that too. But make sure that the reason that you're walking down a specific path isn't because you think it's trendy, not because you see people who are entrepreneurs and you think they have such a great life, and not because you just have some random idea that might be good. You gotta build stuff that matters. Towards the end of my company's life, I had lunch with a friend of mine, and she was trying to build her own business, and she was really struggling. And we were just having a heart-to-heart candid conversation about how hard it is to be entrepreneurs. And she was like, wait, but aren't you like successful? Aren't you doing well? Aren't you great? And I said, who told you that lie? And she was like, well, I just assumed that you were doing so good and building something that you liked and that everything was going really, really well. And she's like, you just seemed so into it that I just assumed everything was great. Little did she know that I had taken a job at Nordstrom's, working 30 hours a week after my day job and on the weekends because I needed the money, because I was not paying myself so we could pay our employees, or I was being paid very, very little. Little did she know that I was walking dogs, I was dog sitting, and I was grading master's and PhD dissertations and theses for side money. I had an 80, 90-hour week. Not because I thought it was cute and because I wanted to brag about it, but because I needed to eat. But I felt compelled to do that because I thought what I'm building could maybe change someone's world. And that's why you got to build something that matters. This journey is not as fun as people make it look. It is lonely. It is sometimes really excruciatingly sad. It is hard. It's also beautiful and rewarding and transformative. But you can't have any of those experiences if you trying to really just build the next, insert something that's already been done many, many times here. So I want to go back to the conversation about innovation and invention. My last startup endeavor, I was trying to innovate. I wanted to invent something new. Now I just want to come up with some really cool idea for something to do with public toilets. Or I just want to like make a really nice t-shirt that maybe tells you how you feel that day, gives you positive affirmations, and ties back into a really cool mobile app. Honestly, the ideas I come up with these days are so practical. My friends are like, that don't make no sense, Grace. That is like so basic. It just doesn't. Because I was the person who was like, well, what if the house could turn into a boat and then you sailed to the ocean, then it took you to the moon, then you came back the next day. I would ideate out here in the heavens. And that's really great too. But the other side of the definitions of invention and innovation was improving upon what already exists. A lot of people want ideas that no one has ever seen before, but no one takes an idea that's and improves upon it as much as they could. The second sheet of innovators took ideas that already existed. Sarah was like, let me get this corset to go. TY was like, let's shrink this little stuffed animal down and fill it with really delicious legumes. Honestly, people took non-groundbreaking, super plain, everyday problems, or even everyday enjoyments, and said, how can I make it better? And so when you all, continue to like riff on your ideas, I heard someone was pivoting, so exciting. I've done a few pivots in my life. When I say exciting, I mean real stress-inducing, but it's a really good exercise. Because that's another thing about building something great, is don't be afraid of what it's gonna become. A great example, even though I hate to use it, I'm gonna use it anyway, is Facebook. I think some of you maybe saw The Social Network. That was a movie that was questionably aligned to the truth, but was very entertaining to watch. And as I was doing research for this talk, I kind of read some stuff about Facebook, rolled my eyes, and then I thought, you know what, though, there's real wisdom here, so let's see if I can't share it. When Mark Zuckerberg and the other gentleman from Argentina and the other person who no one ever remembers their name decided to start this basically online yearbook, and they wanted to push it out to just the elitist institutions of the country, they were building on a concept that was not innovative. Everyone here has had a yearbook. My undergrad even had a Facebook. Before I got there, they sent me a book called The Facebook, and it had every incoming first year's picture and where they were from. And so when Facebook made its way to our campus, which was that same year in 2005, I thought, aren't these people just doing what I just already got, right? But when Mark Zuckerberg was putting it together, he was getting discouraged. He thought, this is like, not gonna make it. There's Friendster. At the time, there's probably like High Five. There were just all these other platforms. And he was like, I'm not build MySpace. Who whispered that? Thank you. Thank you, you're the front, so helpful. And so he was making something that he felt was redundant. And Sean Parker, who here knows the name? Who is that? That's right, Napster infamy or Napster fame. I used to download a lot of stuff from Napster. I want to thank him for helping me build my first music collection. Sean Parker came to him. Apparently he'd heard about the idea from a friend's girlfriend who was going to Stanford at the time and who was on Facebook. And he sought out Mark Zuckerberg. And he said, I think what you're building could change the world. I think that this is incredible, and I want to be a part of it. And he said, I'll give you $15 million. And he became the first president of Facebook. So this is a long-winded story, but I promise I'm getting somewhere. Facebook almost did not happen because even the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world aren't sure if they're building something that's worth building. But in the end, he dug in, they all did, and they decided what they were building could change the world. And surely it has, right? No matter how you feel about the platform. Fast forward to 2017. Sean Parker was doing a series of interviews where he talked about some of his regret about what Facebook is now, what it does, and how it has shaped the world. And he said, roughly, the quote of, I knew we were building something big. That's why I wanted them to keep doing it. I didn't realize how big, and I didn't realize that it would reshape human interaction. Right? And as a result, he has since then, after he left his presidency of Facebook, been working on things that bring communities together, working on spaces that bring people together, trying to bring people together in real time, trying to shape some of the things that he thinks he did not do well at Facebook. I say that to say this, everything evolves. Darwin would probably agree with me if he was alive and sitting in the audience. Change is inevitable. Build something that can grow. Build something that can expand. But build something that when people eventually step away from it, they can build something on top of that too. And be mindful of what you're building and why you're building, right? In the end, Facebook became Facebook because they decided they saw a gap in the market, and that was human need for proximity. Human need for companionship, for friendship, for an outlet to brag a little, to showcase their lives. And they have built an empire off of it. And, once again, no matter how you feel about Facebook, it's impressive to see that they built something that really does matter from something that was really simple. And so I want you all to think about that. Don't just build to be like, oh, well, I'm an entrepreneur. Build because you're an innovator. Build because you're a creator. Build because you can build something better. And so I'm going to leave you with that and open the floor up to questions. So the question is, what was the biggest, or what has been the biggest challenge that I have faced since my journey? I think the biggest change or the biggest obstacle has been the relationships I've lost. Business complicates things, especially if you go into business with friends and family and you are not in perfect alignment with what your vision is. I've experienced it and I've witnessed it. Friendships that you never thought could crumble, you're like, only an atomic bomb will separate us. A business deal gone wrong, a disagreement about the path forward has crumbled them, right? So I think that for me has been the hardest. I really am a loyalist. Like, I love my friends. They mean everything to me. And having to figure out that sometimes stepping away is the best thing for both of us has been a really hard place emotionally to get to. And realizing that the more and more I've pulled away from this space, the more and more I've lost friends because they're no longer making time to build and develop our friendship outside of our one identity. That's been really, really tough. Thanks for asking. That is a great question. Yes, that's a great question because I've been on the managerial end where we've let people go, been like, this is not going to exist anymore. And one thing that I think that we did okay on, but we could have done better, is we could have done better about being very realistic about the finances with them. I think a lot of times we adopt that traditional parent model where it's like, well, if we don't tell them and then we as the adults fix it, when it's fixed, we can come back and say, it's okay. And that just wasn't the case. So we were able to let our employees go and give them, like 6 weeks worth of pay. But in some job markets, that's not enough, right? If people are providing for families and it's a sole breadwinner, that's not enough. And that is something that the founder and I, we talked about all the time. And that's something I pushed. And another really hard conversation was one about health insurance. Until 2015, June or so, I hadn't had health insurance for 10 years. I was paying for everything out of pocket, which is why in 2016, my health went to shit. Okay? And that was something that I really thought about. And when we try to think of ways to provide insurance, it was pre-marketplace, right? It was like 2012, 2013. So the Affordable Care Act wasn't in motion really like it later became. And it was something that we decided to pay our employees well, explain to them that we couldn't afford health insurance, but we could engage in marketplaces that would make it more affordable for them. But those were some of the really hard conversations. And once again, we did a good job of expressing some of those, but I think that you gotta tell the truth, even when it's really hurtful and really when it hurts the most. I grew up pretty low income. My parents sat me down when I was 9 and they were like, you have to pay for college, because we work really hard and we have to send money home to the family. And we also have to work really hard to make sure you and your brother have a roof over your head and you get to eat. But that means we have to make some sacrifices too, because we also have to have savings in case anything goes wrong or we get hurt. And I was like, I'm not even in like 5th grade, what's happening? But I knew that from that day forward. When I decided to play 3 high school sports, when I decided to join student council or write for the school newspaper, I knew what I was doing. When I got those summer jobs and those after-school jobs, I knew what I was doing because my parents made me a part of the game plan. They were like, we know you're little and you can't really understand, but this is how bad it is, and you got to step up. And I think that if we had done that in the beginning, there's a chance we could have pivoted and become something else. Yes, so one of the structures I employ for this is good old-fashioned whiteboarding. So what I mean by that is Whenever you have an idea, whether it is super grandiose or very pragmatic, throw it on the board. Like actually physically write it down. So something I did with a few business partners 3 ideas ago is we had like these like giant Post-it note kind of things, those little white papers, and we stuck a few and we said, what is the core idea? Who would use this core idea? Like, does that demographic even have money to afford this core idea? And if this core idea can't be met, what is the, path to least resistance that we could build? And then when we did that, we realized that our core idea was trash. We were like, oh, that's not gonna work. Because the least common denominator was nothing. It really wasn't. It had to either be the full grandiose idea or that single building block had no connection to that and was not something people would buy. So once we understood that, we thought, okay, in this core idea that's not really our big idea, is there another idea? And then we ideated down from there. And by the end of our kind of brainstorming, we had a totally different idea, right? And so it went from we were going to build an app that helped women, specifically like plus size women, which not really, but just any person with a body, get clothes that were attractive and cute and fit their bodies, to, oh, we can do affiliate marketing and make 10 times the amount of money and not have to have an app, pay a bunch of You see? You're like, oh, okay, that's right. But it was a totally different idea. It wasn't the same thing at all. But that's how we got to that process, is because we realized that through affiliate marketing, we could maybe actually raise enough money to fund an app development, and we would already then have a following. So sometimes you go back to jump far ahead. And so that's how you have to build your ideas. It can't just be this is a great idea for this moment. How does that idea grow and develop? And on day one, when you have $10, what are you actually going to sell?
So you talked about the exhaustion not being a badge of honor. I feel like something we hear a lot is like you really have to be committed and prepared to do 12 or 14 hour days and sleep under your desk and things like that. So if we're trying to keep that in mind, what are the things that you would say are most important to prioritize about your business, so that you're working on the right stuff if you are still prioritizing your life?
Yeah, so when I was in college, undergrad, I was really busy. I was a varsity athlete, and I also was an RA, and I also was like running a few clubs. I was just and I was working 20 hours a week, work study. I was doing the most. So around my junior year, I was like, I'm gonna kill myself. And I was that person. I was like sleeping in the library. I was like waking up, running home, showering, going to my first class, double majored, double minored, still graduated on time because my scholarship was only for 4 years. Circumstance will make you achieve some great things. But what I did is I broke down my day into 25-minute intervals. This sounds like really anal, retentive, but it worked. I had just an Excel spreadsheet, color blocked it, and I started my day at 6:30. Because I had to go and lift for track. And I ended my day at midnight. And every 25 minutes were accounted for, even like walking to class, eating in the dining hall. And then I started scheduling things for fun. I was like, see movie with friends. And then that took up like 5 25-minute blocks. I was like, oh, Lord, can only do that once this month, right? But I built it out for 7 days a week, and I shared it with my friends. And they were like, oh, my goodness, we can tell that this person's already going to have a problem. But I did it because it kept me accountable to me. And so even now as an adult, on my calendar right now, this event is on my calendar. I also have on my calendar to like walk my dog. I have reminders in my phone. It's like, meditate right now, go to bed, like read for leisure. And so, I'm now the biggest advocate of audiobooks because when I walk my dog, through the valley of the shadow of death, I listen to tons and tons of books and podcasts and all this stuff because I know I don't have time to read, right? So if you break out your day like that, you can put in the segments of time for you. You gotta take care of you. Once again, whatever you're building will wait. Even people who are doing groundbreaking medical research for, chronic diseases and cancers, even they get to go home and like have a meal. So what are you building that's so important that you can't go home and have a meal? But that's that ego. You gotta check that. What you're building is not so incredible that if you kill yourself, someone's gonna be like, oh, they've been martyred. And that's what I tell myself. It's not that serious, not that important. I can make time for me. And now I don't do it as much. Now I've moved away from the 25-minute increments because I've trained my mind to be very considerate of what that time really is.
By the way, I would say that methodology that you've been talking about will also work if you're not going to go off and do something on your own as an entrepreneur. Just working in a big company. If Ryan were here and he works in a big company, right, he would say, no one at Intel is going to tell you it's time for you to stop now and go have dinner or go walk your dog. It's up to you to build that stuff into your life. Super important.
And productivity, efficiency.
The Sunday calendar.
Yeah.
Open the calendar on Sunday and look through the week and look at that time. What have you done for yourself? What have you done with your friends? And I take stuff off my calendar from Sunday to Sunday. I'll just write to somebody on Thursday, you know what? This just isn't going to work. Can we do it next week? Sure, we can do it next week. That's fine. You know, just to make sure that you have those blocks. Anyway, we
You got to go.
are running a little bit late.
My fault.
Not your fault. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks so much. I'm going to give everybody till 4:45 for your presentations because we went a little bit over. Yep, but 4:45 is the cutoff. Thank you, Grace. Thanks so much.